friends, and welcome to another episode of ezerwatchers, where we as women discover more of who we are, learn how to effectively fulfill our various assignments, and gain strength as warriors in the kingdom of God. Today's episode is a video recording of the devotional that accompanies the blog post Isha Kahil, a Virtuous Woman. This blog post was posted on September the 5th, 2019 on our ezerwatchers.com website. The words of encouragement expressed in this devotional were gleaned from meditation on a verse in the book of Ruth. That verse is Ruth chapter 3 and verse 11. Ruth 3 and 11 states, "And now, my daughter, do not fear. I will do for you all that you request, for all the people of my town know that you are a virtuous woman." These were words spoken by Boaz to Ruth in Ruth chapter 3 and verse 11. Many women use the Proverbs 31 woman as the standard against which to measure themselves, to assess whether or not they are a good woman, an excellent wife, or a virtuous woman. But what exactly makes one a virtuous woman? To answer that question, we turn our attention to the book of Ruth in the Old Testament. Ruth was a Moabitess who married an Israelite refugee, Kilian. Kilian's family had migrated to Moab years prior because of a severe famine that had plagued their hometown, Bethlehem. For some time, Kilian had lived in Moab with his parents Elimelech and Naomi and his brother Mahlon. Then Elimelech, their father, died, leaving his widowed wife to care for the two young men. The boys grew and eventually married Moabite women, Ruth and Orpah, continuing their residence in Moab, not returning to their hometown, Bethlehem. Now, I found some interesting information while I did my research on Ruth, Naomi, and Orpah, and I discovered that some Jewish scholars claim that both Orpah and Ruth were daughters of Eglon, king of Moab, and as such were royalty. They were princesses. We read of Eglon in the book of Judges. Remember, Ruth, the setting of the story was in the time of the days of the judges. So these Jewish scholars, they claim or they submit that Elimelech was a man of great wealth who chose to take his riches with him to Moab rather than have them depleted by the famine in Bethlehem. It was his status as a wealthy man, they say, that made his sons suitable candidates for Eglon's daughters who were princesses of Moab. Now back to the Bible's account. The Bible's account continues to tell us that after about 10 years of marriage, both Mahlon and Kilian died, leaving behind their mother and widowed wives. Naomi, their mother, encouraged the young widows to go back to their family so as to have an opportunity to remarry and build families of their own. Her intention was to return to Bethlehem, her hometown, and live out her remaining years there. Orpah, who had married Mahlon, heeded Naomi's advice and stayed in Moab with her family. But Ruth chose to accompany Naomi to Bethlehem, abandoning her family and Moabitish way of life. She vowed to remain with Naomi until death and to accept Naomi's God and people as her own. Naomi tried fervently to explain to Ruth what lay in a future with her. There was no hope of remarriage, as Naomi did not have any more sons for her to marry according to the Levirate law. In addition, not only were there the prospects of poverty and hunger for them both to look forward to, but as a Moabite, a foreigner in the land of Israel, Ruth would be subject to great reproach. Ruth the Moabitess would be returning with Naomi, who was returning in shame and in lack. Naomi had left full, according to Ruth chapter 1 and verse 20, a woman from an illustrious family escaping the impending suffering of famine and leaving behind friends and relatives to suffer. She now returns empty with a Moabitess daughter-in-law to former friends and relatives who may feel some animosity towards her. Not only had the family defected, but they had given their sons, eligible Jewish bachelors, to Moabite women. What was so particularly scathing about Moab? What was it that was so resentful for Moab in the eyes of the Israelites? You see, Moab was a nation that was born out of incest. Not only that, it was also a country of idolaters, idol worshippers. It was a country with whom Israel had had many conflicts over the years. In fact, God had even given them a command before they entered the promised land that specifically stated that an Ammonite or Moabite shall not enter into the congregation of the Lord. Even to their 10th generation shall they not enter into the congregation of the Lord forever, because they met you not with bread and with water in the way when you came forth out of Egypt, and because they hired against you Balaam, the son of Beor, of Pethor of Mesopotamia, to curse you. That can be found in Deuteronomy chapter 23, verses 3 to 4. That was an aside. Let's get back to our text. Eventually, Naomi and Ruth arrived in Bethlehem. None of Naomi's relatives or former friends stepped forward to give the woman aid. However, Ruth, instead of allowing her aged mother-in-law to go into the fields and work, urged Naomi to stay at home while she, the former princess, or so it is told, joined the poor in gleaning the fields. We are told that she worked tirelessly from morning until evening. Ruth chapter 2 verse 7 and verse 17. She worked daily under this tiresome strain throughout both the barley and the wheat harvest seasons. News of her character as a caring daughter-in-law, a laborer, and a convert to Judaism spread throughout the town Bethlehem. Boaz said to her, "I've heard all about you. I've heard about the way you treated your mother-in-law after the death of her husband, and how you left your father and mother and the land of your birth and have come to live among a bunch of total strangers." That was the Message version of Ruth 2 and 11. "And now, my daughter, do not fear. I will do for you all that you request. For all the people of my town know that you are a virtuous woman." Ruth chapter 3 and verse 11, according to the New King James Version. Folks, it was public knowledge that Ruth was a virtuous woman. The people of Bethlehem had observed Ruth's efficiency, her ability, and her strength in the face of poverty, in the face of hardship, and even more in the face of humiliation. She fought against the climate of prejudice, animosity, and hostility, and she overcame. She did not let the climate infect her spirit, but remained humble, modest, and positive, being content no matter her state. She approached every day with valor and courage, relentlessly engaged in life, although there was no seeming hope of a change in their situation. She was a woman of uprightness and integrity. Ruth's virtuousness is demonstrated in her strength. Elimelech, the father of Chilion and Mahlon and the husband of Naomi, lacked the strength to face famine, which would result in loss of physical wealth and comforts, so he fled to Moab. Ruth possessed the strength needed to abandon a life of physical wealth and comforts and embrace a life of famine and suffering. Let me repeat that. Ruth's virtuousness is demonstrated in her strength, whereas Elimelech lacked the strength to face famine, which would result in loss of his physical wealth and comforts. Ruth possessed the strength needed to abandon a life of physical wealth and comforts and embrace a life of famine and suffering. What was it about Ruth that earned her the description of a virtuous woman? What made her virtuous? She demonstrated physical and mental strength. She displayed efficiency and ability. She maintained her integrity and uprightness. She was a force to be reckoned with, an army that could not be conquered. She did not let life circumstances overcome her. Rather, she rose above them. Back to Genesis 1 and 28. She subdued them and became the overcomer. She had dominion in her situation. The woman of Bethlehem testified to Naomi concerning Ruth. Your daughter-in-law who loves you is better to you than 7 sons. That's Ruth chapter 1 verse 15. This is the value of a virtuous woman. My friends, every time you choose to fight and not give in to what life brings you, you are being a virtuous woman. Every time you hold your head up high and persevere in spite of, you are being a virtuous woman. Every time you let the ignorance, bigotry, and hatred of others roll off your back, you are being a virtuous woman. Every time you put your abilities and efficiency to work, you are being a virtuous woman. Every time you hold the hand of a loved one who is suffering in pain and agony and willingly choose to walk with them through that pain and suffering, you are being a virtuous woman. Every time you choose to value your vow to God above all else in your life, you are being a virtuous woman. Who can find a virtuous woman? The next time you look in the mirror, remind yourself that one has been found. That virtuous woman is you. You heard me right. That's you. You are a virtuous woman. Now, the transcript of this devotional can be found on the ezerwatchers.com website. And if you wish to dig deeper into this idea of found a virtuous woman, you can explore the blog post, Isha Kail, a virtuous woman, and you can look at the Bible study that accompanies this devotional, Proverbs 31, a work of poetry. I'm praying for you. See you next week for another episode of ezerwatchers. Bye. Guys, I am so excited to be your guide on this journey, and I would be delighted to hear from you. So please like, share, comment, and subscribe. And to stay updated, don't forget to put on your post notifications. Also, if you'd like to check out more about ezerwatchers, please feel free to visit us at our website on ezerwatchers.com. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you on the next leg of our journey.